What's up, y'all? Welcome back to Dolphins Daily with your boy Chris Kane, giving you a daily dose of Dolphins talk. First of all, let's give it up for the hat. Okay, look at this Dolphins cap. No, it's not merch, so you cannot buy it from any online store. It's just a hat. I think it's cool. Merch, maybe eventually, but not right now. Today's show is a little bit disjointed because the news cycle is a little bit slow, but we got some topics. We're going to hop right into them. We're going to start with Skyler Thompson finding a new home. We're going to give him a light applause. He got signed by the Pittsburgh Steelers to a futures contract, which means he's kind of on the roster, but he's not like an active roster, but they can call him up whenever they want to. Good for him. I don't know what Pittsburgh is doing at quarterback. Russell Wilson said he wants to come back. I don't know what Justin Fields is going to be doing. They have a lot of quarterback issues. I don't believe Skyler's did answer. Otherwise, he probably would be still in the Dolphins. But he's a former Dolphin. He, played a good playoff game against Buffalo a few years ago. We got to give him credit for that. And he put good time in here. We don't have any beef with Skyler, but it is a thing where he's no longer a Dolphin, and I don't believe he will be a Dolphin in the future. So, wish you the best, Skyler. Hopefully, we see you on the field. That's hate. That's hate. That's like, hopefully, we see you on the field. Like, oh, this going to be. You know what? That's too much. Shout out to Skyler, man. Happy you found a good home. Great organization. Way colder, so he better buy a jacket. Let's move on. Let's talk about the defense. So the Dolphins' defense this year was actually surprisingly good, and I think we didn't realize until the season ended where the Dolphins stood. So the reason we're doing this topic is because the Dolphins finished top 10 in total yards allowed and points per game. And this has only happened like 7 or 8 times. But every other team that did that made the playoffs. But we did not. So it's like a weird stat where it's like, man, the defense balled out. And I think some of that was because we had a backup quarterback playing a lot. And so 6 games, you don't know how many points you're going to score. So the defense is really locked in. Unfortunately, we didn't score a lot of points in the games that we didn't give up a lot of points. And so we still lost. But the defensive effort, we got to give them credit for what they did. They were a very solid unit most of the year. We lost a couple games late. The Arizona game comes to mind, which was just absolutely disastrous. And don't get me started with Buffalo again. It's just a thing with Buffalo. We don't need to talk about it. It's a thing. But the defense was very good, and we're probably going to lose some guys. I think we're going to lose both safeties, maybe a D lineman or two. I think we're going to lose some players. But the defense was great this year, and I know the season is disappointing overall because we didn't make the playoffs. We finished under 500, so the idea is that the season was a wash. But it was like, no, there's props to be given out. People did their job this year, and we should give them credit for that because they did a good job. It just didn't translate to us, winning. But that's because football is a multifaceted team. I mean, we fired a special teams coach and wide receivers coach, so special teams is not doing their job. And offense for chunks of the season didn't do their job. Then the defense could be great, but 2 of the 3 units are not being great, right? So it's not their fault. But sometimes you give credit. This is not a moral. It sounds like a moral victory kind of thing. Like, hey, at least we did our side of the job. And that's not how I wanted to come across, but that's kind of how it's coming across. They did well. They deserve credit. It wasn't good enough, ultimately. But shout out to them because you did your job. And good for them because no one thought a defensive unit was going to be great this year. Defense last year was not amazing, which is why our DC is now in Philadelphia. So, moving on. I was scouring the universe trying to find some Dolphin content, and I came across this hypothetical trade. Now, most hypothetical trades are just garbage. It's just somebody throwing something out there like, hey, I got an idea. Why don't the Lakers trade for Kevin Durant? I'm like, okay, and give up Rui Hachimura. What are we doing? But in this case, I also don't believe this is a super viable trade, but it was fun to talk about. So the idea was, what if the Dolphins gave up a 4th and a 6th round pick to get Deebo Samuel? And I know you're wondering, why would San Francisco do that? Deebo has been an all-pro. He's really good. And the 4th and the 6th sounds kind of low, but receivers at the end of their tenure with teams typically don't get paid off with high-value picks. Like Randy Moss, I think, was a 3rd or 4th round pick for the Patriots back in the day because we know you're kind of a distressed asset, and we know that we don't want you here, and if we can get anything back, because if you don't, then they're going to cut you and get nothing. So they will trade a good receiver for fifth or sixth. I mean, Deontay Johnson got traded to Baltimore this year, I think, for a sixth round like conditional pick, and earlier in the year he looked like a solid wide receiver three, and then they just basically let him go. So the trade compensation is not great, but my San Francisco, as bad as Miami's cap is, San Francisco's got a whole another list of trouble. They are paying Bosa, Warner, Trent, McCaffrey, Ayuk, Deebo, and now they're going to be paying their quarterback, right? So they can't pay all these people. So the idea is that Deebo is not payable. They don't want him on the cap next year, right? They drafted Pearsall from Florida, and he looked like after the shooting, which is crazy that he survived the shooting and kept playing, but he survived the shooting. And towards the end of the year, last 5-6 games, it's like, okay. And Juwan Jennings, anytime they gave him a chance to shine, I thought was great. I don't know. I think Juwan Jennings actually is pretty solid. So if you have Ayuk, Jennings, and Pearsall, I think no one thinks that's a bad receiving unit. And then they have arguably the best tight end in the league right now. So Deebo is expendable is the point. And so because he's expendable, everyone else in the league knows he's expendable as well. We know you're not going to re-sign him. You saw him this year. He gained a little bit of weight at first. Then he played like 3 or 4 bad games in a row. Then he said, I'm not watching, not giving me the ball. Then they gave him the ball and he was terrible. It's like we all saw it, bro. Like you said, give me the ball. They gave you the ball, and then what'd you do? Fumble, nothing. So we know Deebo's still talented, and because McDaniel was part of the Shanahan tree, there's probably similar terminology. Scheming wise, they can probably do a lot with him. I can definitely see Deebo lining up in the backfield and getting a lot of pitches, direct handoffs. So as a talent fit, it'll be interesting to see him with the Dolphins. But realistically, again, if we sign him, then he would be on the cap. And again, you saw the show yesterday. I had the glasses on. We're talking about cap stuff. And so I don't know how he fits in the cap, but the idea that Deebo could be on the Dolphins team at some point, I don't think is out of the question. He may have to restructure some stuff. He played at South Carolina. Florida's, not super far in terms of, commuting and all that. And the offense would be good for him. And it's great weather. So I don't know. It's a wild trade. Let me know how y'all feel about Deebo being on the team, because Miami doesn't have any big receivers. Like everyone we have is like 5'10" and under. And Deebo is not big either, but he plays like he's 6'12". So it's interesting. I don't know. We will see. But I saw it. I said, you know what? Let's bring it up. Let the people talk about it. We'll talk about it. But we're going to end actually on a really awesome story. So most of the time we talk about football, it's all about on the field impact, right? X's and O's, tackling, all that good stuff. Rarely do we get to talk about a player off the field that's actually like good. And so Terron Armstead is really involved in the community. Some of you know this because you live in Miami. And so part of his pledge has been to help people in these inner cities and kids who don't have the resources to like move them towards entrepreneurship. And most of that comes with education, right? So he has a foundation where he's been showing kids how to build the soft skills that make you a good entrepreneur. Some of those are public speaking, like the art of a good handshake, some of the financial stuff, like how we talk about taxes, businesses, that kind of thing. Things that they wouldn't have access to normally, but with knowledge, they can now make a decision, right? Because for a lot of kids, it's not about acumen, right? Whether or not they can actually do things. It's more about, are you exposed to these things? If I never know about business taxes, if I don't know about LLCs, if I don't know about the value of public speaking and the value of having separate bank accounts and things of that nature, I'm not going to just seek it out. That's not really how people move. But when you show me, then I have the option. I can keep on whatever path I'm on now, or maybe go on a different path. And because he's, made it from where he's made it, from a small school to an all-pro to a multimillionaire, I think it comes across as more genuine, right? And it's one of those things where it's doing good work where you are. And that's the thing. Like, he's not anywhere close to the highest paid guy in the league, but you don't need to be Kirk Cousins, who is the financial guru of the NFL. You don't have to be Kirk Cousins to do good by people. And a lot of it is just putting your time and energy where your mouth is. And if your heart is genuine and you find the right outlet, that you can kind of make things happen. So he talked about it, and he had this quote. He said, "This is real to me. All the football stuff will go away. We can do all this till we're covered in dirt. This is the real impact that we can bring on to the next leaders and the next ones and dive back into the community, right? So his foundation has now been added into the 5,000 Role Models of Excellence project. And what that project is basically a series of foundations coming together, banding their resources together to help educate, mentor the youth on better paths forward and more options in the business and entrepreneur sector, right? So it's not just him and his own foundation doing things. He now has the backing of other organizations, Congress people, and it's really cool because now the more units that come together, the more backing you have, the more people we can impact. It's not just my money; it's also their money and their money. We pull it together, and now because he's a football player, so he has a job, like he has a practice to do other stuff, so he can lend his celebrity, his finances, and his own foundation to the greater collective. And overall, the goal is to, they started with a couple of local high schools, but the goal is to go into more and more schools, bigger and bigger programs. Think of it like Big Brothers, Big Sisters, but more like on the business side. That's kind of a good way to like sum it up. And so the idea is that we want to really expand this into as many local schools as we can. Maybe start even younger to like to middle schools where kids are starting to develop their real personalities for real. And why not pour back into your community? Like, it's only good work. Not all the kids will take it. Some will still do what they do, but some will. And you never know what you might spark. You might actually make the next person who will down the line be someone to help build up South Florida, because ultimately South Florida is an amazing place to be, but we want to build up the next generation. We don't want it just to be like the older people running Miami. We want some young people to say, hey, I came up through Terron Armstead's program. Like, I now learned the skills. I'm going to go to college for certain skills that maybe I go to get school for business instead of, fine arts or whatever. And now I can take that degree, reapply it to my community, build it up, and we could just make the community better overall. And it starts with education. And it starts with people putting their time and energy in the right places. And I think he's doing a great work. And I know I mentioned yesterday that he may or may not be retiring. I don't think that impacts his work like necessarily. He can still do both things, but while he's there, I'm happy to see that he's doing more than just protecting Tua. I like how I landed that plane. All right, that will be it for this episode of Dolphins Daily. Again, we're doing your daily dose of Dolphins talk. Let me know in the comment section how you feel about the Deebo or the defensive thing. We don't need to talk about Skyler Thompson. He doesn't matter anymore. And if you have questions about Terron Armstead's foundation, if you want to help or contribute in some way, I'm sure we can find the right links to maybe help facilitate all that stuff. But again, this is Chris Kane giving you a little bit of Dolphins talk. I will see you guys tomorrow. Peace.